What's up, everybody? Elizabeth Olsen here, aka Wanda, aka Scarlet Witch. It is Monday night, and you know what that means. It is time for the Monday Night Movie Club on Society Reviews. This week, you get to listen to three down on their luck chodes take a break from being racist, internet trolls, and talk about a bunch of god-awful movies that you probably aren't going to watch anyway. So let's take it to Rob Motto, Rick Aragon, and Jacob Smith. Boys, try not to embarrass yourselves for once in your lives. Have a good show.
Keep it up. I'll have Elizabeth Olsen doing Biggie Smalls "Give Me the Loot." Yeah, so, how you guys doing? It is Monday night. It is episode 40 of the Monday Night Movie Club. I got my good buddies here joining us once again. Rob Motto joining us soon to be leaving the state of Washington. Do you feel excited? Do you feel happy? Do you feel the change?
Yeah, about 2 weeks left. So countdown time.
Nice. You should go to a Mariners game before you leave too. Just one last go, one last hurrah.
Yeah, if I'm not too poor, maybe.
And toward us from the poor state of Houston, Texas, is our good buddy Rick Aragon. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm fine. I'm not in Houston. I've not.
You don't have to deny your Houston origins. There, we all good.
Yeah. I'm doing good, and with apologies to Elizabeth Olsen, everyone is rushing out to see one of the turning points in cinematic history. So I don't know what she's talking about.
Oh God, we're just going to talk about this film. There's a lot to talk about here tonight on this show. Beforehand, Paulie was on the show last night with Midnight's Edge, and he did tell me on the show that the two Hispanics that he would never fuck with is Cubans and people from El Paso. So I'm trying to ask you there, Rick, is there something about El Paso that I should know about? You guys have a reputation of being not so friendly. What do you think?
That's not true. We're the friendliest bunch, and besides, a lot of our cousins are in Cali. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, so I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe the people around the Segundo Barrio, but where I grew up in, we're pretty friendly. So Paulie has nothing to fear from me, unless he brings up Babylon again. Then no holds barred.
Yeah, we kind of got into it last week because he was trying to say that, the movies that we all saw last year that almost killed us were actually good. And then we had to push back. It was like, no, they weren't. So that was a fun little conversation we had there last night. Would have gotten him, and I think John Delrose may have watched this movie or not, but I'm not sure if he was even available tonight. So we got three movies to talk about here, and there's a lot of topics within these movies that I want to talk about because I think one of the big things here we'll touch on a little bit, but I want to go in more detail about it tomorrow on the Barroom podcast, is this whole thing with like Gwen Stacy and kind of the way that people are viewing her character as like an allegory. Is it just complete projection on their part, or is there actually something there? And I think we'll talk about a little bit about it before we get started here, but so I came to this revelation. We'll talk about this later on tonight with South Korean cinema. And I wanted to shoot this your way. I watched, look, before this show, I told you guys, hey, look, I've seen a bunch of movies this year. We're about the 6-month point into the year. My favorite movie so far this year was Plane. And it's a good movie, not shitting on Plane, but it's not a movie that I would particularly put on my top 10 list of the year. Like, it wouldn't be something I would say, oh, this is the best movie of the year. It's like, no, it's a really good movie, but if that's the best movie of the year, then we're having problems here. And I was looking at my rest of the list. I didn't even have a top 10 completed up until like literally a couple of days ago. That was because, I mean, if I go all in, I'll have like 3 out of 5 movies that are in my top 10. It's like, there's way more. This can't be the only thing here. But I watched 3 South Korean films this weekend. I watched a film called The Roundup, No Way Out. We'll talk about that later on tonight. I watched a film called Switch, and I watched a film called Unlocked. And all 3 of those films are now in my top 10 of best movies of the year. And it's not because, like I said, they're overwhelming great movies. It's just that the quality of these films that we're getting here in the United States are so bad, that they're so soulless, is that it feels like over there, maybe they're about, say, 30 years behind us as far as cinema goes. They still have a passion to be true to the genre. Like, When they do comedy movies, they're staying genuine to the comedy genre. When they're doing an action movie, they're staying true to that. If they're doing a crime movie, they're staying true to the crime genre. Where here we're just getting a lot of this subversive nonsense that is trying to, influence culture and manipulate culture and all this other stuff that is going on in this country. We go here, we watch these movies. This is like, not only do I feel nothing for these movies, but I do feel something is utter contempt. So, Rob, I know you're not a big fan of foreign films or stuff like that, but I'm telling you, it's like, at least with the South Korean movies, you don't feel like you want to die every time you're in a movie theater for 2.5 hours. You're just like, okay, I just wasted my life again. Is there something going on here with kind of the disconnect with American movie theaters, as in I guess cinema from other countries right now? Or is it just here in the United States that it just feels like we're going down the drain very, very quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that corporations took over the movie studios about 50 years ago, and it's a slow declining slide from that cultural high point, and now we're sort of seeing the effects of globalization, and where telling a good story isn't the most important thing. I mean, merchandising rights, we see that with Disney products and Marvel, Star Wars, all that stuff is somehow almost as important as the movie posting a box office, surplus, of ticket sales. So it's a shame because we're the ones that suffer. We're the ones going to the movies and trying to look for something, anything that is a reminder, remnant of the past and the heights of American movie making. Look, I'm not against watching foreign movies. My focus is just more Western. But, if something's good, I will definitely check it out. It might be that I have to do that going forward just because there's so little coming out of American film studios. Even the stuff that comes out of America that's interesting that I've liked, it's out of A24. It's out of specialty studios, Cinestate, which I don't think exists anymore, but they did, S. Craig Zoller's movies that have come out the last decade or so. So it's not Hollywood that's necessarily innovating. It's individual production companies and artists that kind of have to piece together a budget from mostly outside and international sources. So this is what happens when something like Hollywood becomes decentralized over a 50-year span. Now that's the sort of like non conspiratorial look at it. There's all kinds of things going on right now which make me feel like it's on purpose, like they're just kind of trying to blow it up.
Yeah, Rick, let me kind of shoot the same question over to you. Like, what is some of your thoughts of the international film market right now versus what we're seeing here in the United States?
I don't know much about the international market per se, but I can guess here a lot of let's say American films don't seem to want to take a lot of risk. They instead want to do this Marvel type and DC EU type films, and a lot of them are really written by committee, where you have so many hands on them, and you want to. And people think that you give something, if you give a film enough spectacle and enough visuals and lights and all that, that bells and whistles, so to speak, that you're going to have a good movie. People confuse um, experiencing this week. People confuse big box office with high quality. They're not the same. I really can't add much to what Rob said. I think he has a I'm more the non-conspiratorial side because I'm not big on conspiracies
You're
myself.
square.
Yes. It's hip to be square. All I can tell you is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of risk, and the people who do take risks, they get beaten down. I keep going back to how there were people constantly bashing Martin Scorsese because he did not like Marvel movies. And I'm thinking, I don't know if we really want to have like a long series that's basically a TV show that's put up on the big screen, and suddenly that is cinema, and whatever he's made can be dismissed. And we're going to have an example of something that is basically like a TV show put up on the big screen and declared an unimpeachable masterpiece. But we'll get all to that later.
Yeah, so by the way, I forgot to try out our guys in the chat because you guys are slowly trickling in. So Duke is joining us. He wants to know who's your favorite Marvel character. The one they just got rid of because people like me are fans of the Punisher. I always go with the Punisher. I think I still have a Punisher Max book somewhere over there. But you guys particularly have any favorite Marvel characters?
I liked Frank Miller's Daredevil and kind of like what they did with his Netflix arc and stuff. So I always say Daredevil.
I wouldn't know the difference between Marvel and DC.
Well, there you go. You got your answer there. Rico's joining us in the chat tonight as well. And then, of course, Excalibur, we just read your comment a little bit earlier there. So I saw two other movies, just real quick, we catch up on this one, that were both South Korean films. I watched a film called Unlocked, which is actually on Netflix. I think this film was supposed to be released last year. Something fell out of the distribution, and then Netflix got it. So it's on Netflix right now. It's called Unlocked. It's essentially a film about a girl who goes out night on the town and loses her phone on the bus. And her phone just happens to be picked up by a serial killer who goes in and essentially what he does is that he uses like a voice modulator to convince the girl that he's talking to, like she's talking to another girl who has her phone, tells her that, oh, I accidentally smashed her phone. I dropped it off at the repair shop. You can just go pick it up over here. And then, of course, the repair shop is his. That's kind of like his headquarters. So what he does is that he puts like this spyware into her phone so that he can see everything that she posts, everything that every video that she takes, and then you can also control like both ends of the camera, even when the phone's not on. It's just like a full spyware app, right? So he's following this girl, stalking her. He's systematically ruining her life. He's setting up, people close to her so that she'll break break bonds with them, breaking her down to the point where he can come in and like make the kill or whatnot. It's kind of like this a thriller, psychological thriller, especially. It's very, very good setup. There's this angle here with like the cop and like his son, which kind of I think plays up to having like a third perspective in the movie, but doesn't really help the grander scheme of things. But it's a very, very well done film, and I think a lot of people were trying to say this is what I have to laugh at some people. They were trying to say that, oh no, this film is unrealistic because no one would ever fall for anything like that. It's like, really, people, like you guys are taking like your 8th booster because TV told you to. So don't try to convince me that somehow you guys are too smart not to fall for someone hacking into your phone and destroying your life. But it kind of goes on to expose just how much we all are addicted to our phones and how we hold our entire lives on these little devices here. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not stupid enough to put compromising information on my phone like some people do, but at the same time, I mean, thinking that thing is going to be protected just because Apple or Google says so really just shows you how naive some people are. So that's a really good film that I would throw out there to recommend. And then another film that I saw was a film called Switch. Now, the best way I can describe Switch is that I have a tough time calling it a Hallmark movie because there are elements to the film that definitely aren't safe for kids or for families or whatnot. But to me, it's like a Hallmark movie if someone actually had talent. Like if somebody actually wanted to, hey, let's actually make a good movie here. The idea is that you have this actor who's kind of like, the smug Hollywood bad boy. It's like, he just won an award for best actor. So he's all up in his own world. And one day he enters the cab during Christmas and he gets switched into an alternate dimension or alternate universe, however you want to say it. And he finds out that, his ex-girlfriend that he left years ago, he's married in this universe and they have 2 kids. And it's kind of him realizing that even though he had everything in his past life beforehand, like everything that he really wanted, which was like a family, kids, happiness with his father, stuff like that, he basically was in a position where he took up all of this fame and fortune and then threw his family to the wayside and gave up on a family that he never had. It was him coming to the realization. It's like, look, you can have everything in the world, cars, money, the big house, but it's all things that really don't matter at the end of the day if you don't have anyone to share it with. So it was a very well done film. There's also like a kind of a co-plot there with his best friend who's a failed actor who gets to live his dream, but he's not nearly as egotistical as this guy is. He's actually like basically living his life the right way. So he's basically showing him, how he would live life as a family man and how he would live life the way he was living it before. And it's honestly very well done. I couldn't really find too much to hate about it. Some people will probably say it's a little too cheesy for him because it's such a heartwarming film, but I think that's maybe exposes more of the kind of like the nihilistic side of things that we're accustomed to in films these days. So I enjoyed it. It's probably my favorite movie so far this year. It's called Switch, so I'll give that one out for another recommendation. But yeah, we'll talk about the third movie a little bit later on in the show. But guys, like the American look, we still have Oppenheimer. We still have Mission Impossible. And then there's like a third film that I just saw a trailer for and it actually looks really good. So look, there's still plenty of films to come out later this year that are going to be probably be very, very good. The Martin Scorsese movie we're all waiting for. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, we're blowing it right now, but guys, the content overseas right now is far better than what we're producing here. I mean, I know that Seth Rogen film Joyride that's coming out here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to put that number one on my worst movie list. I haven't seen it yet. And then when I do see it, I'm going to see if it's worthy of being moved down from number one. But I highly doubt it's going to move there. So I'm just going to placeholder it with number one with an asterisk right now. I mean, we need to shape up because we're getting beat at our own game.
You are so wrong. First, don't forget, we've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is also by Seth Rogen. And secondly, we do have one of the greatest films ever made that was just released. So I don't know why you keep saying that we're not doing well cinematically when we have a literal peak cinema landmark turning point that we all have just experienced. So I mean, I'm puzzled as to your very negative view, Jacob. And I'll also add that these are interesting films, the two that you described. They do have interesting ideas. And as someone who has seen a couple of Hallmark films, yeah.
Well, we know someone who reviews Hallmark films. The only problem is she blocked at least two of us. So there's a problem.
two of you, not me.
Yeah.
And I still don't know if she does think that that the film that we'll talk about later really is the new Citizen Kane. So.
Well, let's get into it because I was going to save this for later, but because the reaction to this film, especially on Twitter, has just been so insane. It's like we got to start off hot here. Let's go over Enter the Spider-Verse. Now, this was Rob's movie of the week, and I was going to let you go this one alone, but because, like I said, the reaction to this was so insane, I was like, okay, I need to form an opinion on this, so I'm going to have to watch this myself. I did get finished watching the movie right before we went live here. I'm gonna go ahead and just address a couple of things here. Now, one of the big points that people were talking about this weekend was the fact that Gwen Stacy is apparently either a trans person or a trans allegory in the film, right? So we're going to talk about this in greater detail tomorrow, but there's a couple of things that I want to actually, you, Rob, since you've seen the movie, about that one issue. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Gwen Stacy in this universe is called Spider-Gwen because she's one of the offshoot Spider-Man characters. And we'll talk about why I hate that in the first place. But in this film, she has this issue with her dad because her dad doesn't know that she is Spider-Woman in her universe. So she has to do the coming out to her dad that she's the villain, the criminal that he's been after this entire time, and he just can't accept the fact that his daughter is Spider-Woman, blah blah blah. So a lot of people in the trans community apparently watched this film this weekend, and I will say this: I actually, when I went to go see the South Korean film I talked about today, I saw 4 people in front of the theater. One of them was definitely trans, and the other 3 people are, let's just say, people who look like they would hang with trans people in real life. Let's just put it that way. So,
allies. They're called allies.
Well, yeah, that's the word. So clearly there was a certain audience that would really appeal to this film here, but the reaction on social media to this, calling this is the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time. This is one of the best Marvel movies of all time. Like, just absolutely insane. And part of that was because in their mind, they thought that this was an allegory for trans people coming out to their parents. Now, I'm gonna ask you this question, Rob. after seeing the film, do you think that there's any validity to the fact that maybe that the filmmakers of this movie were throwing some things out there that they picked up on, which is why they had this reaction? Or are these people just psychotic and they're just projecting things into the movie that aren't there?
Yeah, I think that if there's any connection, it's loose and it's vague in the way that like you write stories about human problems. Like recurring theme with superheroes is secrets and secret identities and the persona and putting on a mask and all that stuff. That's look, you can connect to that if you're gay or trans or whatever, but so can 90% of society, who wasn't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. So it's not talking about you. It's talking about a general human like theme of secrets and the damage they can cause and the rifts they create. And that's things that we all deal with. It's a universal human concept. It has nothing to do with the individual gay or trans community. I think that's hilariously like pig-headed. Like you'd have to have your head shoved so far up your own ass to believe that it's about me. Hey, they're talking about me. And it's like, no, they're not. It's like you get out more, talk to more people. And it's like you realize, oh, I'm a fucking idiot. That's my takeaway from all of this was like, oh no, like you thought that was what they were communicating. Wow, you're fucking stupid. So it was more of a laughable kind of thing for me than anything I would take seriously.
Yeah, so I think here's an article here from Shocker Pink News. And obviously, when I heard this whole argument, I had the same reaction that you did. It's like, guys, you need to stop projecting your crap into every single film. Like, get a life already, right? But I decided, okay, let me hear this argument that has so many of you convinced that this is a movie about trans people. So this article here says that Spider-Man fans are convinced that Gwen Stacy is trans and Across the Spider-Verse. And here's the evidence. So first of all, look, I don't know who has to break the news to you here, but you trans women, unless you spend like 7 figures on facial surgery, you're not going to look the way that you think that you look in your own mind. Let's just put it that way, right? Like you're not really like most trans women aren't fooling anyone. I'm just telling you that because maybe you guys haven't figured it out yet, but I mean, stop it. So here we're talking about Enter Spider-Verse. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about this a little bit too, how, we have the first biracial Spider-Man, and there's an Indian Spider-Man, and there's a black punk Spider-Man, and a Mexican Spider-Man. We'll get to that in a second. But obviously, this we covered here like about a month ago. This whole thing with the in Gwen's room, she has to protect trans kids, trans flag up on there, proving that she's an ally to the trans community. So there were some stuff in this film definitely that was Easter eggs for these people. They were hooking them to the bait, and they definitely caught on to it. So I was like, okay, well, we know that was in there. I think like Miles Morales at one point had like a Black Lives Matter patch on his backpack. There's obviously some allegories to the Black Lives Matter movement in this film too. So I mean, there are some stuff in there that's sprinkled in, but is this outright a trans allegory? I think they're talking about the color scheme for Gwen, which is also with the trans flag too. Now, let me ask you this, Rob, because you mentioned this before we watched this movie, how you weren't exactly a big fan of like the animation style of this movie. I'm not sure if you saw the previous one, though. What did you think of the way that they animated this? Did you think that it was somewhat creative, or did you find it kind of off-putting after a while?
Well, I didn't see the first one, so I didn't know what it was going to look like. I in general, I'm just not a fan of animation because I'm just not a fan of like, I like the sort of traditional filmmaking style. And I tend to think of animation as for kids, not that it always is, but in this case, I actually thought the animation was the only thing about this movie that's worth seeing. Like, I thought there were some really good stylistic flourishes. I thought it was very creative. I thought they even used filmmaking techniques in how they did some of the animation. Like, really, I thought it was clever. I thought it was interesting. It probably would have been something back in 2018 if I saw the first one and be like, yeah, that was cool. It's all the other stuff that to me is really lackluster and just very mediocre, very pedestrian. I think it overly relies on its animation to sort of, get away with not having a very good story.
So another point that they used to say that Gwen Stacy is trans is this person said that at a point in the film, her father is wearing a trans flag with the colors on there and saying that, well, no father or a person or let alone a cop would be that much of an ally unless they have somebody trans in their family. So this is them alluding in their mind that Gwen Stacy is trans or a trans allegory in this film. I think we have another one here. Let me see. Let me make sure. Okay, this is the one from like Mark Campbell. But there was a third thing on here that I wanted to check out. Yeah, they said that while Gwen Stacy's gender identity is not integral to the plot of Into the Spider-Verse, the struggle she faces in her life has resonated with the trans community and cemented her as a trans icon, whether she's cisgender or not. So even here, they're saying, hey, look, she might not be trans, but she's still an icon of the LGBT community, which, if you keep in mind, this is the same thing that they did with Megan like 6 months ago. When Megan came out in like a week, not even a week, like 2 days after that film came out, I was like, oh, yeah, she's an icon of the LGBTQ. I was like, how did you possibly come to that conclusion, like watching this film? So it's like, on one hand, I could just like discredit all these people by saying you're just absolutely insane. You probably need mental help at this point if you're just seeing trans in everything that you watch. But I have to say, like, there were some Easter eggs, quote unquote, that was thrown into this movie that they wanted people to see. So I'm thinking to myself, is it really that they're that insane, or did these people really try to put this stuff in the film hoping that they would catch on to it and they noticed it and they're expressing it? Because I'm hearing from people saying that, hey, look, I watched this movie. I don't know how they possibly came to that conclusion. I think maybe it's because we're so used to the propaganda being so in your face and blatant that if it was done subtly, you wouldn't even have noticed, right? Some of this stuff probably just went over people's heads and didn't even notice it. So maybe they didn't pick up on it, but other people did. So,
well, I would say that it definitely went over my head. I didn't see that protect trans kids thing because I was not looking at the door. I was actually looking at Gwen. I was looking at the character. I was not focusing on other things. Uh, the trans colors, her having the same trans colors. Again, I'm not so familiar with the transgender flag that I would actually know what their colors look like. And this sort of being some sort of trans allegory, sometimes, I'm reminded of what Sigmund Freud did not say, a quote attributed to him. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes what you see is literally what is. There's no allegory, there's no symbolism. Maybe that's just how it is in Spider Gwen's world. That's what the colors look like. My question really is more of, if we establish that Gwen Stacy really is trans, does that make Miles Morales gay because he's attracted to someone who is a woman but with a penis? I mean, I don't know. Does that make him gay?
I mean, look, these people live in a complete fantasy land of reality, but I will tell you this. If you were to fool a black guy into falling in love with you or dating you, and then telling him after the fact that, hey, by the way, I'm trans, aka I'm a dude, it's not going to end very well. And I've been trying to tell people for years, like, look, there are people who will date trans people. Just come out front with it and say so. Don't try to trap people, because when you do that, that's when people get hurt. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh my God, trans people are being killed. I wonder why.
Well, that would probably be Miles would be fine with dating a trans person, because that would be the Puerto Rican side of him. They wouldn't be the black person, black side. And I'd like to point out a couple of things. First, what does Miles's father, Jeff, think of the Black Lives Matter movement? Because he's a cop. Is he supportive? Is he supportive?
A cop in New York City.
Yes. Is he supportive of this? Moreover, the last name Morales is already Hispanic. So obviously Jeff, Captain or Sergeant, he's still Sergeant Jeff Morales, Miles Morales' dad, is already Hispanic, just by virtue of his last name, unless he's adopted.
Well, see, that's the point that I never understood either, because he's supposed to be half black, half Puerto Rican. His mom's Puerto Rican. So wouldn't his dad's name, would he have his father's name, not his mother's name? Like, why would his last name be Morales?
He's cucked in his own house. That's why.
No. Because the father's last name is Morales. He's Captain James Morales.
Why? He's black.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't ask me. These are things that
I like how the lore of this character falls apart just asking simple questions. But look, this is the reason why this film exists. The whole point of this film is that you have all of these, what I want to say, borderline fan fiction versions of Spider-Man out there, because it's not enough just to have Peter Parker. We can't just have a Peter Parker white guy Spider-Man. No, we need to have a black Spider-Man and a woman Spider-Man and an Indian Spider-Man and a Mexican Spider-Man and a fat. We have to have all these variations of Spider-Man to where it's not enough that we have the Marvel multiverse now. Now we have the Spider-Man multiverse, which is a multiverse within the multiverse, where we acknowledge all the other Spider-Mans that have existed, including the ones in the movies. They're all canon in this universe. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Let's start off with the plot of this whole film. The plot of the movie really doesn't settle in to like almost an hour and a half into the film. So the first hour of this movie, it's dealing with Gwen's her conflict with her dad. Then we jump over to Morales's conflict with his dad, and that just kind of like meanders on for about an hour, almost an hour 90 minutes, to the point where you're like, what is the central like point of this movie? It feels like I'm just watching like an episode of like a TV show and nothing's really happening. And then they get to later in the film where it's like, oh yeah, here's the issue. And before we get to the issue here, what did you think, Rob, just kind of the slow start of this film? Like, am I the only one to just watch this movie? It's like nothing is happening up to this point.
Yeah, no, I think Act 1 is 90 minutes long. just getting into the actual like different multiverses or universes or whatever the fuck they're called. Look, I think this is a big problem in terms of storytelling and plot, where you have all these different Spider-Men across, and they're sort of colorful distractions that don't really move the plot forward other than incrementally. And it's colorful and fun, but there's just these lame, corny jokes that get like thrown out there, and it's whatever. But it's just like the amount of time they take setting this up. And again, I'm coming in blind. I didn't see the previous movie, but they just spend way too much time setting that up and getting into the movie to sort of like, I feel pretty frozen out by the time that we're even getting into the story.
Yeah. And I think the thing that like caught me off, I don't want to say off guard, because like I said, I didn't really watch much of the first movie either, so we're kind of just like dropped into this universe here. But I know the backstory of the character based on like the comic books more than the actual movie itself. So I figure since this is the second of this series here, that we've already done the establishing part, right? Like the establishing is supposed to be done in the first movie. So now that we know who these people are, we kind of get like further like into like the action part of things. But with this movie, it seems like they completely flipped that idea to where I guess they felt like the story of these two characters who we're supposed to identify with, and apparently some people do identify with them, that's the more important aspect of the story to them. It's like we don't really need, the fight between whoever the bad guy is, or Spencer's favorite character in the world right here, Ben Reilly, who I legitimately forgot at one point was even in the movie. That's how long and stretched out this film is. But yeah, it feels like they were more focused on, trying to have people identify with the characters. And it's like, okay, that's great if you're trying to look for some kind of allyship between here. But it's like, if you're just here for like an actual like movie viewing, like this really isn't capturing you like at all, unless you're one of these people who identifies themselves with these characters here. And I didn't see the connection here outside of that.
Oh, yes. I've read a couple of reviews where their praise involves, oh, I have someone I can relate to because I'm also biracial. Oh, I have someone to relate to because now this person looks like me and speaks Spanish like me. And that's what makes it, this generation Citizen Kane. And I'm not being facetious, apparently. It's interesting that the whole Gwen Stacy segment is the pre-title sequence, because that's a good 15-20 minutes of it. And yeah, some of it is beautiful animation. I'm not going to say, oh, it's terrible. No, some of it is quite well done, but it takes about 20 minutes to get just to the opening credits, and then we spend a long time trying to get Miles into this meeting with, I'm assuming, the guidance counselor or the,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Just pause that thought real quick. By the way, like I thought that this movie was centered on Miles Morales. It took like what 25 minutes for him to actually appear in this movie. Like you literally like you start watching it, and you think that this whole movie is gonna be about Gwen. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot that Miles was even in this movie, even though he's the guy in the poster.
Though I will say I did notice Rachel Dratch as the guidance counselor right away from SNL, among other
It's
things.
hard to miss that voice.
And then
man.
Rosie Perez. I guarantee that's Rosie Perez. Like I didn't even have to look
No.
it up.
I don't
not?
know. No.
Okay.
From the Miles's mom?
Yeah, who is that?
No, I don't know.
No, the one who plays Miles' mom is the chick from Orange is the New Black, the Puerto Rican girl.
Okay.
Well, no. My bad. That's the wrong actress. It's the one from God, what's the name of that show? She was on like New York Undercover and Nas. What's her name?
I don't know.
I'll blank. I'll have to.
See,
look
now
it
I
up.
do have
Yeah,
to look it up, but
yeah, it's a completely different actress. So my bad.
Yeah. So to be honest, I really didn't recognize any of the voices because I don't really care. All I can say is that it took a long time to get to whatever the story was, and there's and that whole section about when he's dealing with the Spot, and they have to do kind of these comedy bits, and then as he's trying to get to the meeting, he has to keep stopping to, I guess, do some kind of action or save someone. It's like, that's not funny. That's not interesting. You're just taking up a lot of time here to get to the story, and then you have this very long party where they're celebrating that he's going to be a captain now, Captain Morales, and that again was just taking longer and longer and longer. And I think I don't remember exactly when in my notes I wrote, and I literally, it was probably after that, but I actually wrote, it was right after the Mumbai Hatton sequence. Or at this point, I actually wrote, "This is boring," and all in caps. And so it was just taking so long. And I mean, think about it. We spent a good hour and a half just getting to them meeting and kind of moving whatever the story is forward. So that first 30 minutes, at least, maybe almost an hour, is just filler. Beautiful filler sometimes, but filler nonetheless. Building up Spot. And the curious thing about Spot is I'm supposed to remember him from the last movie. I did see the last movie, unlike both of you. I had the same feeling that I did when I was watching the last Tom Holland Spider-Man. What is it? Home Away from Home, or
Homecoming?
Home Alone, or Home is Where the Heart Is, or whatever.
No
whatever
idea.
nonsense. Yep. Yeah, it has how home somewhere in the title.
Homecoming, No Way Home,
Retirement Home. All I know is that that's when Jake Gyllenhaal again is meeting with all the people that Tony Stark is like, you got screwed over. I mean, I have no idea who any of these people are because I'm not going to remember people from five films ago. Apparently, this guy was also in the climactic battle at the end of the first film, which I gave, by the way, I did give like a 4.5 to 5 out of 5 for that film. I'm not supposed I don't remember this person, this Spot person. Why? I mean, why do I care? And note that he disappears for a long section of the film. It's like he's almost irrelevant to the plot. So I'm wondering. So there's so much going on. It's very frenetic.
Well,
it's very frantic.
here's part of your problem too, is that you have so many characters that are all supposed to be viewed in like this equal footing with the protagonist, and a lot of movies are doing this now because they can't just center the film on like one character, maybe even two characters for the case of the story. It's like, no, we have this large, vast pit of characters, and everyone has to have their moment. Everyone, it's like I said, we're pro wrestling. Everyone has to get their shit in, right? Everyone has to get their one spot that's going to make the crowd pop and cheer and whatnot. We saw this a few weeks ago with Fast X and how many characters they had in that film when they're trying to squeeze everyone into a 2.5-hour frame. And you're seeing it here on the animation side. They're doing the exact same thing. Now, let me ask you this. We all know what the quote unquote MCU comedy style here is, right? And it felt like this was very, very strong here in this movie, to the point where there's the running gag in this film is that one character is explaining something and he just gets immediately cut off by another character who's not taking him seriously at all. We've seen this version of the comedy so many times from so many other films where like there's supposed to be like an important plot detail that's being explained, and the character's like, "Oh, sorry, bro, not listening. What did you say?" And it's like I don't know. This has to be like some kind of like what was the best way to describe it? It's like some kind of like team of executives that are like, hey, people really laugh when they do stuff like this, so they just keep reusing it over and over again. What did you think of the comedy style of this movie, Rob?
It's really lame. Really like the most corny, pathetic kind of jokes, attempt like swipes at comedy. And what's weird is it either is doing that, it has these really lame comedy jokes, or it's deathly serious and like talking in these hushed tones of like family sitcom like drama bullshit. So like it's a very weird like deviation that it goes from this sort of jokey comedy style to this serious tone about, hey, we really love you and we care about you and we're proud of you. And it's just like, it's really tacky, recycled sitcom garbage. But yeah, the comedy style reminded me very much of like an MCU movie. Though I will say it did not annoy me as much as the average MCU movie did. So there is that. I can at least say that as a slight positive.
I'll say that because you both didn't see the first one. This one sticks to what they did before. In the first one, when you introduced the different version of Spider-Man, Miles Morales and Peter Parker and Gwen, Spider-Ham, who was my favorite, and Spider Noir, all those, they did kind of go back and have that individual or that character explain his or her backstory. It somehow worked there. Here, because I'd already seen it before, I was not particularly impressed. And what was the thing with the Lego Spider-Man? I mean, what was the point of that? That was just pointless.
It's their way of establishing the multiverse of Spider-Mans. We have to show all the different types of Spider-Mans there are in the universe, because this is my big problem with kind of like this whole setup here. Is that I think I mentioned this earlier too. This whole thing feels like fan fiction. Like all of these characters feel like characters that somebody would have written on Tumblr 10 years ago, and now like a multinational corporation is like backing these made up, these asinine characters. Like we saw the comic books that are making, hey, there's a disabled lesbian Spider-Man who's flying through the air with the wheelchair on her back, and then we're seeing like other really dumb variations like of this character. It's like everyone has to have their own Spider-Man now. It's like, and then you just completely bastardize the quality and the standing of the original character that everyone actually likes, the Peter Parker one, because you're telling people that, oh, we don't need Peter Parker anymore. We need Miles Morales to be acknowledged as the real Spider-Man.
What's even more insufferable is the fact that they're doing that Spider-Woman movie, and it's going to have Sydney Sweeney and Dakota Johnson, and I forget the third one. I think there's another hot chick in there. But I'm like, could you make something good? Could you like maybe possibly make something good with these people who are talented when given direction? And no, it's probably going to be the same recycled garbage of like, hey, remember these Tumblr characters? Let's just bring that back to life, and it's going to be a disaster.
You didn't like Spider Horse and his the cowboy.
What about the Spider T-Rex? Do you guys know the Spider T-Rex?
Yeah, I saw the Spider T-Rex.
But this is what I mean, is that this is personality free characters, personality free writing, where it's like there's nothing inherently interesting about what's going on. It's just incident and colorful distraction and kind of like this nonsensical, like, hey guys, this is the multiverse, anything can happen, it's wacky. And yet it's just like, why do you, like, to audiences, why do you think this is entertaining? Seriously, it's like the most infantile kind of bullshit imaginable, and yet you're lapping it up like it's a masterpiece of an art form. Yeah,
it is. Sorry. It's art. It's everything. It is peak cinema. It's a landmark, a turning point in cinematic history. Do I need to go over what was said in one of my favorite reviews? Bless his heart.
Go right ahead.
All right, not bashing on this poor individual, Mr. Pope. I hate it. I hate to bash on him, and I'm not bashing on him. I don't know him. I wish him the very best, but these are direct quotes from his YouTube review. This is one of the greatest movies ever made, not just in the animated form, in general. He does point out that he cried during the movie. This is what movies is all about. Uh, this is a movie that will remind you why you love going to the movies. And again, he says, he closes it with, this is one of the greatest movies ever made in the history of cinema. All right. And of course, it also, he does expect it to be the greatest film trilogy. Yes, and he also did say about something about this is the greatest sequel ever in the history of cinema. Uh, those types of things do two things for me. First, they almost egg me on to hate this movie before I see it because it just becomes so much almost
Well,
deranged fanaticism.
just real
And
quick, I mean,
yeah,
this was what I heard about the first Into the Spider Verse film. Like people were making these exact same claims about the first Spider Verse film, and I was like, I mean, maybe. I mean, it's an animated movie. It's not really my thing, but I heard people say they're like, "Oh, yeah, this is the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen in my entire life." Back in 2018, so it's like to hear this being continued 4 years later, 5 years later. It's not that surprising that people are still riding this wave of let's put over, like I said, the fan fiction version of Spider-Man's.
then you also have to remember we do know someone, Jacob, who did declare Endgame to be one of the greatest films ever made. And again, I'd like to ask all these people. I've been thinking long and hard about this, and I shouldn't have. I've been thinking long and hard. Compared to what? Seriously, you're saying that this is, and let me see your quote again. Um, this is one of the greatest movies ever made in the history of cinema. Cinema, which has existed for about 100 years, or about more,
Yeah,
more than 100 years. This is one of them. Compared to what? What is your standard for a great
Endgame.
film? And yeah, Endgame, Toy Story. I think he mentioned Toy Story. I think he mentioned Empire Strikes Back. Now, Toy Story and Empire Strikes Back, they're great films. I think they're great films. I wouldn't call them
Mhm.
some of the greatest ever made, but I'm just curious. All these people who keep going on about this is peak cinema. This is this is one of the great films. This is a landmark, a masterpiece. I've heard endless times that this is a masterpiece. This could be the new Citizen Kane. I'm just wondering, compared to what? What are you comparing? What's your standard that says this is one of the greatest films ever made in the history of cinema? What movies would you say rank among them? And again, I just point out that the sequel, yes, the sequel, that this is the greatest sequel ever made. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe The Godfather Part Two might have a better claim to that. Apparently not. What what is the standard? And it's these types of almost crazed comments that make me wonder, how many movies have you seen? What is your standard? Why do you keep insisting that this is a great film or one of the greatest films ever made? That's a very big, bold statement. And
When
for
people say stuff like that to me, what I hear is that okay, you haven't watched that many movies. Like seriously, like that's what I hear when I hear stuff like this is standard is this is better than yeah, exactly. That's all your standard when it comes to movies now.
well, my thinking is that they're confusing their emotional reaction to a kind of objective, dispassionate viewing of the film. Now, you can be an advocate for a movie, and you can say, "Oh yes, this is one of my favorite movies." If they were to say, "This is one of my favorite movies of the year," I have no objection to that because we all going to have our favorite films, and we're not always going to agree. Heaven knows that. For example, I will always go to bat for Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and you guys will not. My question is, why do you keep thinking that this is one of the greatest films ever made? What standard do you have
I
that
think
would
the
make it
short
better?
answer to that question is representation because of all the representation that's in it. That's why I feel like is the case now. Joining us from his mission silo is Rob Motto. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Just my roommate's being drunk and stupid again. So, but
uh,
I'm in my car.
car
Uh,
video. You have to
oh,
clap when you do car video.
Yeah.
well,
But no,
Rob, I know that Rob, you will agree that this is one of the greatest films ever made in the history of cinema. I mean, it's right there. It was just said, this is a movie that will remind you why you love going to the movies. Who are we to disagree? Who are we to say that this is not one of the greatest films ever made in the history of cinema? In the 100 years plus that people have been making film, this will rank up there. I mean, not like Citizen Kane or Vertigo or Casablanca or even something like Safety Last, Birth of a Nation. I mean, we could even throw in Triumph of the Will if we really wanted to.
well, look, I
None
want
of
to
those
get to this
are good.
point here real quick, and it's kind of like the central because we kind of forget like what the actual like plot of this
What
movie
is
is.
the
What's
plot?
even so we get to the plot and about the plot doesn't even reveal to like almost 2 hours into this film, which is absurd. But we find out that every quote unquote Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse has what we like to call canon events, which means that there are things that must happen to a Spider-Man in every single universe. So it's like the death of the uncle, like what there's multiple other things. I think Gwen Stacy has to die in some version of these universes as well. So we find out here that hey, well, one of these canon incidents has to happen to Miles Morales, which means that his dad has to die. Why? Because his dad is a cop, and then everyone's had a cop in the family who's close to him who has to die as well. So Miles is like, well, let me go back and say something to my dad. Nope, yep, this is it. You're let him die. So all the Spider-Mans in the Spideyverse have to stop Miles Morales from saving his father because it, quote unquote, it has to happen, and that's the central conflict of this movie. Now, before I complain about what I think is the biggest problem of this film, what did you think about the just the reveal of the plot here?
It's illogical and it's confusing because and I think I asked you guys, or maybe I asked this online. Oh, didn't he already have his canon moment with his uncle? Was it Uncle Hank? What it
That's
wasn't
that's
in
what
the
I was told.
yes, in the first movie. His uncle dad, I mean his uncle dad, his uncle Hank died. I think his name was Hank.
They acknowledge his death in this movie.
Yes, and I thought that was the turning point because every Spider-Man has a different variation. From what I understand, Indian Spider-Man's canon moment was when his girlfriend's father dies. I don't know
Mhm.
if she necessarily dies. I mean, I don't remember, but I think that was supposed to be his canon moment, and Miles Morales, in his typical way, in the typical Spider-Man way, messes it up. Look, we touched on this already with that third Tom Holland Spider-Man, Home Away from Home, or whatever it's called. Um, he again, I mean, he got the multiverse, and he got these villains from other universes to come to his world, and he tried to change the villains into more sympathetic people, and it didn't work. At least it didn't work with the Green Goblin. So we've seen this plot before. And look, in that universe, it was Aunt May's death, not Uncle Ben's, that altered, that I guess shaped him into being the crime fighter. We saw this in the first Spider-Man movie, which is recognized. I don't remember if Gwen Stacy's death, which happened in the and in the Dark Garfield, I like that little bit. The Dark Garfield version um, changed Peter Parker. So it just seems that you don't need to be strict about being the uncle. You don't have to be Uncle Ben. I mean, it could be Aunt May, it could be Captain Stacy, it could be anyone really that changes. But it always has to happen. These kind of stories are not unfamiliar to me because I think in Doctor Who they had the same thing. They had what they called fixed points in time, where the Doctor could not interfere and could not change history, and I think in only the newer revised series did they
Okay, no,
change that.
no one cares about Doctor Who. No one's watched that show in like 8 years. So let go.
Well, I'm just pointing it out. But that's how they explained how certain historical events had to happen because it had to happen. Same thing here. All of these all of these Spider-Men have to face a particular death. That's the way I understand it. But Miles, being a Gen Z type, and Gen Z knows everything, and they're the most moral and morally and intellectually superior generation that has ever come along. He can fix it. He can save his dad. But again, my understanding was that his uncle's death was that turning point. And apparently, in this movie, he wasn't supposed to even be bitten by the spider. He wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man. But that changed. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me in that way. Like, he's not supposed to be
Rob,
Spider-Man.
let me
He's
ask you
supposed to be
this
Spider-Man.
question: did any of this make any sense to you, Rob?
No, not really. But that's okay. It's not supposed to. It's not for me, right? All I'm gonna say is, look, if you think that this is one of the best movies ever made, you either haven't watched enough movies or you're being paid to say stupid shit. Other, either way, I can just ignore you and go back to like serious people discussing movies because at this point, what you have to say is irrelevant. You know what I
But
mean? Like it's just like there's just no way. There's no way that this compares to the greatest movies of all time, and saying it just makes you look ridiculous. So that's kind of my takeaway.
but my question again is, what is their standard? What is their criteria? What films are they
We told you
comparing?
already. It's in game.
Yeah,
It's in game. It's that John Cena blockers movie. Like that's the second one, and then the third one is probably Dune. So that there's
hey,
your
don't knock Dune. If you're gonna knock,
there's
no,
your trinity
no,
of
you can
movie
knock
reference.
the David Lynch Dune, but don't knock the
Well, no.
Denis
Actually,
Villeneuve.
Dune is a great movie to bring up because now I can talk about what I hate the most about this film. What I've noticed about a lot of these movies. We've turned movies into television shows. That's exactly what we've done. Because have you guys noticed that there's been an increasing trend now over the last few years that movies are now not just having, hey, let's end the movie and then have a teaser for another movie. No, let's just end the movie on a cliffhanger. So let's waste 2.5 hours of your time and not even give you a definitive ending to a movie. That's what these films have become now. So now we've surpassed the MCU model now, and now we're on the Netflix model. This is what movies are going to become now. Shocker, there is no real ending to this film. There's no real ending. There's a villain who's like the spot guy. Who cares? No one really takes him seriously in this movie anyway. And then you get towards the end, and it's like, well, guess you have to wait 5 years for the next movie to figure out how this ends.
No,
And
one
that's
more year.
how we ended.
No,
Fast 10 ended in a cliffhanger. Dune, that stupid movie that came out a couple years ago, ended on a cliffhanger.
Stop it.
So here we are. We're in the age of cliffhanger endings. Rob, did this annoy you as much as it annoyed me?
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of buildup for not much payoff. And it was just like, I mean, I understand in terms of like the business model, how a lot of like second movies, set themselves up for the third. But this really did seem like just a complete like circle jerk for fans, for people going to the theater, for people paying money. Yeah, it just kind of felt like a wet fart. And I mean, I guess I'm glad that most people who went feel like they got their money's worth, but I certainly don't feel that way. And you know, I'm sure there'll be a third movie. I'm sure it'll make money, but yeah, this movie definitely left a bad taste in my mouth for something that was supposed to be so laudatory.
All right. First, enough of the Dune bashing. You guys are completely wrong on that. Secondly, these kind of semi endings can work. I had no. Recently, I was watching old Ebert and Roper reviews, and Richard Roper did not like Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, precisely because it did not end. It just like, oh, it just ended, and it didn't give us an actual ending, which I thought. But Ebert was like, it's a trilogy, so it's not supposed to have a firm ending. It's supposed to leave it open for something else. Um, Here, it takes a long time to get to where it didn't go. You really could have cut so much out to get you to that sort of cliffhanger ending. And it is a little frustrating because it doesn't really give you anything. It just kind of gives you an appetite. That's why I always refer to the MCU as the world's longest and most expensive soap opera, because you always have to wait for the next episode to see what's going to happen. Um, yes, Jacob, you do have a point in that. Yes, it just we have to have these big endings or open endings to, I guess, have the next movie. But here you could have ended it somehow. I think in the first one it did have something of an ending. I think he became that world
I mean, look,
Spider-Man.
this is a 2.5 hour film. It's not difficult to have a definitive stop point at a film. And look, we all know you're going to do another movie. I'm not complaining about teasing another movie. I'm just saying, give this one a definitive ending so it doesn't make it seem like that, hey, look, it took us 90 minutes to get to whatever the plot of this film was. Then about an hour after that, we ended in a cliffhanger, making this film a complete waste of time from start to finish. Because like Rob said, we got an hour and a half long first act. Then we got whatever the hell the second act of this film is. We don't even have a third act. There's no third act to this movie. It's just go home, see you in 5 years. That's how we end this thing.
Well, no, it's going to be 1 year. It's going to come out next year. The curious thing though is that next year, if when the actual movie comes out, what is it, Beyond the Spider-Verse? How are they going to say that this is greater or equal to this one if this is already one of the greatest films ever made in the history of cinema?
Cliffhangers are for soap operas, not multi-million-dollar movies. Cliffhanger is what you do on a soap opera on Friday when you're trying to hook people in to watch Monday's episode. You don't do this for $250 million Marvel movie. How much did they spend on this? That actually only spent $100 million, which shocks me. I didn't know how they got this done with $100 million, but point stands.
Well, you don't have to, because you know you're going to get more people to basically, run and tell everyone to go see it again, and they're going to probably be people who are going to see it over and over. It's just fascinating. From the sound of it, the three of us were not enamored of this generation Citizen Kane, the greatest film ever made. I'm just curious, and I've thought about this. What is it that we didn't see that everyone else did? Because
that Gwen Stacy is trans.
Well, besides that, I didn't see it, but you look at the people who praise it. The girl that has blocked both of you, but it's not blocked me, was Sana McCanna, the conservative film wolf's wife. She's certainly not a fangirl by any stretch, as far as I know. All of Poly Latino Slant's friends and associates, they all loved it. They're not crazed fanboys, as far as I know. So what is it that I didn't see? All right, let's just narrow it down to me, because it is all about me. What is it that I didn't see? What I saw was a very long movie that was very boring, took a long time to get anywhere, admittedly pretty, but with very little to no substance there. With a villain that you pretty much forgot about, because the way the film makes it look, Miguel O'Hara is a better villain, because he wants to actually keep the multiverse from falling on itself, and it's only smug little Miles Morales who's going to destroy the multiverses because he wants to save his dad. So he doesn't mind destroying all of the Spider-Verses, all of these multiverses, just so that his dad could live. So I get
it's the idea that, well, if I have to lose what I love, then everything else has to go down with me, which is an extremely selfish stance to have. Thinking that, it's worthy bringing down the entire multiverse because me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing that Miguel O'Hara was basically saying. Look, I can't have all of these other multiverses collapse and die because you need to save your dad. This has to happen. Your dad has to die. And even though I would argue that your dad doesn't have to die, because your uncle was the one that changed you into becoming that version of Spider-Man in that world. So we don't need the dad to die. And we certainly don't need the dad to show off the Spanish that he knows. And there's a difference between you guys and me. I actually understood what was being said, and there was one part that I thought was very bizarre, where the mom was when he's trapped in the wrong universe, and she's like basically saying, she said in Spanish, I'd expect spiders to come out of your butt, or something to that. Again, I mean, the audience was laughing, but that was really the only real reaction. I can testify that, like with The Little Mermaid, someone near me was dead asleep, and there was no applause, there was no cheering at the end of the movie. There was just like respectable silence.
Rob, what's your final thoughts on this movie, and what do you give it as a rating?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me taking away from this is just like, the characters themselves and how little they moved me or got me invested in what was happening, or even in terms of being able to relate to them. It's like all these people are either very simplistic or have no personality, or like, there's nothing to them that makes them interesting. And so I just I don't know what is supposed to be so great about it. The animation, I think, is really done well, but as a story, the plot, the characters were all really pedestrian and mediocre, just things that did was like you'd find in a run of the mill sitcom, or family drama or kind of thing. And so it just was a very lackluster viewing experience. I was generous. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5, which is something I gave like The Covenant by Guy Ritchie, which that was a way better made film. So if I was being honest, it'd probably be something like a 1.5 out of 5, if I'm being, completely transparent and honest. But it's a cartoon. It's a kids movie. Like, I don't take it that seriously. Then again, there's
It's a
people
kids
dying
movie
in it.
for adults.
No, but then again, there's people dying in it, so I don't know how much it's a kids movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talking about the death of Peter Parker or whatever, for Gwen Stacy. But so yeah, it's somewhere between a 1.5 and a 2 probably. But just, yeah, I'm surprised it's gotten so much attention for being so lackluster.
Put it to you this way. Before we started this review, I gave it a 1.5 out of 5. And then the more I thought about the ending of this film, I gave it a 1 out of 5. This is a film that the story structure is completely out of whack. The pacing of this film is terrible. It seems like they didn't really have any real direction for this film whatsoever. From start to finish, quite literally, this whole film is just a complete entire mess. And I'm hearing people praising it. I'm not even talking about the people on social media saying, oh, they love it because Black Spider-Man and gay trans, like those people are just insane. I'm talking about the people who review this and actually thought that somehow this was a good movie. Like, I don't understand like where you come from. Maybe it's just me being a jaded film critic who has watched way more than just all the Marvel movies that come out in a year to think that this is somehow any good. This is piss poor from start to finish. I'll put it to you this way. This is barely better than the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger Netflix movie that we watched earlier this year. Barely.
Oh,
So yeah, it gets a 1 out of 5 for me. This, look, at the end of the year, it'll probably just miss making my top 10 worst movies of the year, but it's gonna be an honorable mention, certainly.
well, I'm going to put this as the most overrated film of the year, because the hyperbole and the just kind of intense fervor that people talk about this film, it's almost like it's a religious experience for them. I think I've heard people talk about their conversion to Christianity with less passion than I have with people who talk about this film. I'm going to give it a 2.5, and I think I'm being very generous. Certainly, the animation in certain sections is beautiful to look at. I did think much better of the score, perhaps, than you both did. It was not mentioned, but on the whole, there's no. I don't think there's an actual story here. I was bored for so much of this film, waiting for it to get anywhere.
Rick,
And
the
yes.
music was terrible. That was something I was sitting in the theater thinking, this is the auto-tuned fucking garbage that they're playing. Is this what kids listen to today? Because it's fucking terrible.
You
Yep.
sound like an old man. Get off my lawn. I would. Yeah, I'm trying to find some positives here. I
Yeah,
just
trying.
didn't. I just don't get what the fervor is. If for any reason they do send me a screener, I will actually watch it again, and maybe I'll watch it with someone else. No, I won't. I won't. I can't watch it with anyone else. But I'm. I just wish I understood why so many people were just so passionate and just really, really, really going to bat, insisting that this
You
is
know
best
why?
picture. Well, because they're insane, because they have very little idea of what film is, because they are
All
entertained
of
by
the
something.
above.
They find something, a cartoon that they're passionate about. Hey, I like Spider-Man. Spider-Man's my favorite character. If we want to go back to a comic book character, he's my favorite character. I just, in the first Spider-Man, where that version's Peter Parker died, I was very sad. I actually did get emotional, and I had to be kind of talked down about it. But this one just left me so cold, and colder, because they're just so obsessed with making this one of, a landmark film. It's a 2.5, and I'm being way generous. I think I'm being way generous.
Like I said, I got coerced into watching this film, and I feel like I should be owed reparations for my time given into watching this garbage.
We'll send
Yeah,
you a
so
Whataburger coupon as reparations.
I'll take it at this point. So yeah, that's the great Across the Spider Verse, which was just another piece of crap. But Rick, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the floor here because you watched our second film of the night here, which is the Boogeyman. So give people a rundown without talking like a woman and going 30 minutes about what this film is about.
Apologies to C.S. Johnson and Nerdigans. Um, the plot is simple. After the death of the mother,
Mm-hmm.
a teen girl and a tween girl and their grieving psychiatrist father are dealing with that loss. A man comes in and visits the psychiatrist's dad, announced, and says that he thinks that some sort of monster is following him and that he's responsible for the death of his three children. And he commits suicide in this home, in the home, because the dad has an office in his home. And from there, the little girl who's afraid of the dark is apparently also haunted by the boogeyman, and now they have to fight off this monster while they're dealing, I guess, with their grief. And yeah, that's as close to a plot point as I can get to in terms of plot. Um, what can I discuss? The acting, it was all very dull, very dry, very stern, because for me the movie seemed more interested in being, as I wrote in my review, it's more ordinary people than the Black Phone. It's basically ordinary people with some horror elements attached to it. It's more about their grief, and they all speak in what irritates me in this sottovoce manner, very soft, like very serious, very quiet, almost whispering. um, the audience at one point did laugh at what's supposed to be, I guess, a very scary moment. The psychiatrist is supposed to, another psychiatrist, because of course in this type of movie, the dad, who's a psychiatrist, cannot talk to his kids about their grief. He has to send them to someone else. And that psychiatrist, she put up a little red light that's going to flash and then turn off slowly so the little girl could stop being afraid of the dark. There's one quick shot of the psychiatrist. She's got these really big glasses and kind of curly hair. It looked funny, not scary. You don't really see the boogeyman. He's hidden a lot, and a lot of the movie does not make any sense. The guy who committed suicide, we think that his whole family's dead. So the teen daughter goes to their really rundown house, and you see the dishes all piled up, and the refrigerator has all this really spoiled food. So you think the house is abandoned, but surprise, the wife is there. The wife is there, and I guess hiding out from the boogeyman. A very low rent Sarah Connor, and she's going to trap the boogeyman and kill him. The weird thing is, look, if your husband commits suicide, wouldn't the police have gone to your house and looked around and see if you're still alive? I'm assuming she has to eat. I mean, these are the questions that I start wandering. When your mind starts wandering, when the movie doesn't seem to make any sense, or is just really boring. So yeah, this movie, what I would give it is probably I don't know what that is. Uh, all I could tell you is that after I saw this
Let me
movie,
ask you one quick
yeah,
question before you
yeah,
give the rating here.
yeah.
So, because I think this is like a Stephen King related film, right? Is that true?
Yes.
So, does this hit the same note of just about every other Stephen King film where the ending is absolute garbage?
Uh, yeah. And worse is that they leave the door slightly ajar for some kind of sequel.
Of course, of
Uh,
fucking
and I'm
course.
thinking, what for? There's yes, the thing is that it plays more like a drama. Like if any of you have seen Ordinary People, this is what it plays like. Like they all have to deal with the grief of their mother's death, and a lot of it tries to be scary, because you have a lot of these hallways that are always in the dark, and you've got the candles kind of, because of protection. My question is, why don't they just hit flip a switch and turn the light on? I'm assuming that the hallways have lights, and that would instantly scare off the boogeyman because the boogeyman can't be in the dark. I mean, he can't. Yeah, he's scared of the light. So I'm thinking, look, the little girl has that little glowing ball and she rolls it in. It's supposed to be a very scary, tense moment. But I kept thinking, turn the light on. Just hit the switch, turn the light on. There's no reason for you to have the hallway be dark. Just turn the light on
Was the
and every
film at least scary? Like, did it
no,
jump you a couple of times? Because that's kind of
never.
the whole point of like a horror movie is for it to be scary in
No,
some way, shape, or form,
I
right?
never. No, first off, I don't get scared in horror films. It's just something about me personally. I never get scared. I think maybe one, not even no, not even in Insidious, and I thought that was a very good film. I didn't get scared once, but I think the audience didn't get scared once either. Like I said, at one point they did laugh, and no, I didn't get scared once. And it doesn't help that you really don't see the boogeyman that often, if at all. He's kind of hidden in the shadows, and when you do see him, it doesn't look real. Uh, so I never
Like
got scared.
CGI.
Yes, it was pretty bad CGI. I think maybe the closest was in what looked like a dream sequence where the boogeyman kind of goes into the teen girl's mouth and is kind of going in. But other than that, no, I didn't get scared. I never got scared once. I was pretty bored and just thinking, okay, at least this movie's like 90 some odd minutes. It's not going to be long. It's not going to take a lot of my time. So no, I didn't get scared. I could answer it that way. I didn't get scared. I did laugh with the audience when we got to see that, with the glasses and the curly hair, and she has this kind of weird, kind of smiley expression. It was hilarious. It was really funny. That should be a meme if anyone could come up with it. But no, it wasn't scary. I'll put it that way. It wasn't scary. I didn't get scared once.
So what would you give it a final rating there?
I am really debating whether this is worse than Book Club: The Next Chapter. So
Ouch.
I think I'm going to give it like a zero. A 0 out of 5 because it didn't scare me. It was boring. The acting was pretty bad. Everyone's trying to take this so seriously. There are points that make no sense. I'm thinking there's no logic to a lot of what's going on. So I'm gonna have to debate at the end of the year whether this is actually worse than Book Club. And like I said in my review, I should never have said that Book Club was the worst film of the year. I'm tempting fate too much by saying something like that.
Yeah, especially when you have two Seth Rogen movies still to come this
Oh
year.
gosh.
So yeah, that was Boogeyman. I mean, hey, I mean, all I can say is it's a movie that came out. That's the best thing I can say about it.
Yeah, and expect it to be gone pretty soon.
I mean, hell, Fast and Furious is already gone. Why not the Boogeyman? I mean,
Yeah, this will be on Peacock in a couple of weeks, I guess. It's really bad. It's boring. That's a scary. I mean, that's the scariest part of the movie. That it's boring. It's not scary. It's not interesting. It's not well acted. It's just boring.
Well, I guess this is a great segue to kind of the conversation we were having earlier in the day where we were talking about how the American box office, or not just box office, just cinema in general, has completely fallen off. So this week I decided, hey, I'm going to go out here and watch a South Korean film entitled The Roundup No Way Out. Now, a couple of things about this movie, just in case you hadn't realized. Last year I did a review of a film called The Roundup. And this was a movie starring who's his name's Don Lee. I think his name is Min Don Soo, who's a big time action star in South Korea, and it's very interesting to watch kind of his rise. I've seen him in like multiple films over the last few years, so I know him pretty well. But we were talking about not too long ago how kind of the American action star is pretty much dead. I mean, all we really have at this point is Tom Cruise, right? As far as like names that's associated with a movie that can actually like draw you to a movie theater. It's like we don't have that era of like Stallone, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger anymore like we used to, but South Korea, they still kind of do. So this is the third film of a series that they're working on over in South Korea right now. And the premise of the movie is that he's a detective who has a small unit of other detectives with him, and they basically go around investigating international crime rings that happen within this country of Korea. So in the last film, they were investigating a human smuggling operation out of the country of Taiwan that leaked into Korea. This time around, essentially how the setup works is that there's this new drug that's taking over the streets of Korea that's called Hyper with an I, by the way. And it's supposed to be more addictive and more powerful than both cocaine and heroin. And nobody knows where this is coming from, who's making it. Turns out that the drug is being traced all the way back to Yakuza in Japan. Now, we make the joke all the time, and Spencer, if he's in the chat now, he can attest to this, about how people give, like, right now, the Little Mermaid, people are saying, oh, those Asians are racist. They don't want to see a black mermaid. It's like, look, here's what you have to understand. Asians don't even like each other. Like there's no unity within the Asian community whatsoever. It's like, you think that they hate black people? Ask them about Japanese people and see how many friendly reactions you get out of the Koreans. Like there's no unity within the Asian community whatsoever. Like they're at each other's throats. They're still fighting about stuff that happened between them in like the 1500s. So don't expect any kind of kind of like black unity flag or anything like that from these people. It's not gonna happen. But so yeah, the villains of this film is the Yakuza, and essentially, yeah, exactly. And so essentially, what happens here is that there's a dirty cop in Korea who's working with Yakuza to sell these drugs, but one of the cops turned on him, and right before he died, he hid the drugs somewhere. So nobody knows where the drugs are, so everyone's looking for it. So you got the dirty cop was trying to get it from the Yakuza gang so that he can extort them out of money. Yakuza's trying to get their drugs back because it's like $20 million in Korea. I'm not sure what the conversion rate of that is. And then, of course, you have the cops that are involved in this as well. So there are a few things that I really did like about this story. It's not the if you're looking for like a compelling like action movie that really gonna make you think or anything like that. This is really just more of a pure action popcorn film at its peak. Like this is just a movie you go to and you watch. I think it's only a couple of hours long, not too long, but it's a pretty solid movie. The characters are already well established, so you don't have to see previous movies to understand like what's going on here. This is a standalone movie. And then the appeal here is that you get to see Don Lee just absolutely beat the crap out of people because, he is such, a big dude. He's basically, I think they was calling him like the Korean Beast. I think that's kind of his nickname out there. Some people have called him the Korean Hulk, but he's the guy who all these gangs try to like fight him one-on-one. He just absolutely bulldozes them one way or another. And it's fun to watch him just go out there and just beat the crap out of people for a couple of hours. He also does pretty well in the comedy stage as well. They do a good job of mixing the action with the comedy in this film. They do great lines. It's not just like we were saying with the MCU style of comedy where someone trying to explain something and then it was like, oh yeah, I wasn't really paying attention, like that kind of annoying comedy. It's more situational, but it's played up pretty smart to where it actually does make sense, and the payoff is actually really good. So the thought process of this film works out far better than with other films that I saw here. And one thing about Korean cinema, I'm not sure if there's any kind of like ideology that pushes this, because Korea, for what I've known, it's like I think like a quarter Buddhist, a quarter Christian, and then mostly everyone else like don't have a religion. So I'm not sure if there's any kind of thing going on here. But I noticed that with Korean movies, a lot of the villains are kind of like over the top, cartoonishly evil, to the point where it's like, wow, this guy is like really just a complete like evil douchebag. So like the guy who plays the Yakuza swordsman here, he just shows up right out of the boat and he's like chopping the heads off of like Korean cops like almost immediately, right? So yeah, I don't think this is a rated R film, but there's some pretty intense violence on here as far as like that side of the aisle goes. So if you're a little bit squeamish, maybe don't see this movie, but you're dealing with, Japanese and Korean crime mobs here. So of course there's going to be a little bit of more violence attached to this. But yeah, so I mean, for me, I watched this film. I enjoyed it. I was in a theater with a few people who enjoyed it as well. Like I said, it's standalone action movie. If you just want to enjoy yourself and have fun for a couple hours, which is something that we haven't done here in the last few weeks, it's definitely a movie that I would recommend you go see, especially if you love those old school action movies. Like I know this Friday we're watching Chuck Norris's Invasion USA on movie night, so it's very much a throwback to those style of movies. And one thing that I've noticed with South Korea is that while they definitely try, you can definitely tell the American influence in their films here. But they're still kind of in the influence of what America used to present to them in the 80s and the 90s. So we're not in like the progressive age of where they're doing like these victim films where they're trying to prop up like the trans community or like the black community and all this. That stuff is fundamentally being rejected on that side of the aisle. There's also apparently a strong anti-feminist movement because there's a little bit of a population issue in Korea right now. So they don't want their women to start adopting this ideology that they don't need to have kids. So they're very much pushing back against a lot of the things you're seeing here in the United States. So if you're looking for something fun, if you're looking for something that's very entertaining and something that you can feel like you get your money's worth, instead of wasting it on Spider-Verse, whatever the hell that film is, or the Boogeyman, if this movie is in your area, go check it out. I give this one a strong recommendation. Crowd-pleasing action film. I give it a solid 4 out of 5. Like I do. Like I don't know if it'll be my top 5. I think it will fall by the time we get to like the end of the year. But this is definitely one of the strongest movies that I've seen so far. This is a movie that I enjoy. I kind of put this on the same line of Plane, where it's just a good action movie that you can enjoy and have fun with. And really, these days with entertainment, I mean, that's kind of the bare minimum that you can expect and you can be happy with as far as that goes. So that's kind of my quick rundown review, unless you guys had any follow-up of those questions.
You don't need to see the first one to follow the second one.
No, I mean, like I said, they do a good job of establishing, kind of like where this series is. Every one of these movies is presented as a standalone. Like, these guys are cops. There's nothing like from the previous film that kind of like plays up to it or anything like that. So you'll understand everything's going on with this film right away.
Well, that's an interesting difference between that and this generation Citizen Kane, which you needed to, I guess, kind of understand what was going on in the first film.
Or the MCU, you have to understand what's going on in the first 32 films in order to understand how we got here.
And the TV shows. Don't forget the TV shows.
And the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah.
That may or may not be canceled.
So, well, this looks like that's probably the best one that we looked at, or that each one of us saw. So congratulations, Jacob. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I guess like I say, I lucked out and by watching a movie that wasn't even in English. So there you go. Well, I think we've come up to the ending part of our show. And just in case you guys were wondering what the movie is for next week, it is Transformers. And look, I'm just going to be real with you guys here. I'm not a big fan of the Transformers series. So I know that might seem like a shock to some of you guys, but the last two movies fundamentally broke me. That's just like absolute terrible films. And the only promise that I've heard with this movie is, this one's going to be more like Bumblebee, which is only better by comparison to the other terrible Transformers movies that we received up to this point. So by comparing it to crap, maybe this looks good by comparison, but this is a movie that is going to have 5 screenwriters attached to this film. 5. It's almost like the LeBron, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 screenwriters. And
listen, I saw the first Transformers movie in theaters when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and basically the whole thing was, hey, they made a Transformers movie, and Megan Fox is this hot chick who wears short shorts. That was it in 2007, and it was like, oh, hey, they have a new Camaro. Oh, it's so cool. And it's just like, okay, those first movies were shit. Like Revenge of the Fallen, that second one, that was utter shit. And they're still making these movies. And now they're going to ruin Beast Wars, which is the show I grew up with and enjoyed quite a bit. Okay, sweet. Awesome. I can't wait.
Well, I knew someone who saw Revenge of the Fallen 3 times on opening weekend. And this person and his wife had invited me to go see it for the third. I mean, they were third time, my first time. and they told me that yes, I saw it. That this was the third time they'd seen it opening weekend, and they saw the second time in 3D. After I left the theater, I was like, no, I don't know why you would want to watch it, again, let alone two more times. What is it about this particular movie that you loved? I stopped watching after Revenge of the Fallen. I never cared. I mean, these are movies based on what, an animated show or toys, and you can't get, you have to get five
But
riders.
it seems like the sell for this film is that if you notice, they seem to be pandering the marketing of this film between like the black and the Hispanic community. Like if you notice, even when we talked about this with the trailer, like they were playing like DMX and in the trailer because they were specifically pandering to the black and brown community using DMX's music. So it seems like they're going to try to make some kind of play here with black and brown people with this next upcoming movie. And what better name to pander to black people than Pete Davidson, who's in yet another film that we watched here. Like he seems like he's been in the film like every couple of weeks. We watch a movie, somehow they shoehorn him into this. Like, I don't know what the deal is here, but it's starting to get very, very annoying.
Yeah, and yeah, though there was some controversy in another Transformer movies where two of the characters were, talking in ghetto or speaking with some sort of, what you would call a black accent, and that was supposed to be racist. I don't know if it is because, again, after Revenge of the Fallen, I no interest. So I hope I will be able to understand the nuances of the plot that five people came up with.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like, then every single one of these films are like 2.5 hours long. This one's only 2 hours and 7 minutes long, which I guess is cutting it back a little bit, but still, like, this is why I have to start looking for movies in other countries because this is what we're getting here, like week after week. And just in case you thought that the week after this was any better, it's not. In case you've forgotten, in 2 weeks, I believe the three movies that are coming out in that time is what, The Blackening, The Flash, and there's another one that we don't want to see. Oh, Elemental. So,
Well, I had someone at work tell me that they actually thought Scuttlebutt was cute. So,
well, was it your communist friend who told you that?
no, 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 no. Was it was my, I think she would be my Gen Z coworker. And she
Great.
thought, yeah, she thought it was cute.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys promote what you guys promote before we sign off here. Let you guys know what we're gonna be talking about tomorrow on the Barroom Podcast. So, Rick, what do you got coming up?
All right. Well, as always, I've got my GoFundMe. It's kind of stalled a bit, but I'm always appreciative of anyone who contributes. I'm still going to publish one haiku a week for the time being. I'm really enjoying that, and just more reviews of films, past and present. Even though no other film will ever compare to the greatest film ever made, which was across the Spider Verse. That's the greatest film ever made. So no other film will ever compare. But that's it. That's my plan. That's my goal. And thank
Rob,
you.
what you're doing on your countdown to goodbye to the Washington tour?
Pretty much just working until I can afford to leave. So it's another couple days, and then so I basically have like roughly 10 days, 14 days left here. I'm just going to be watching movies and hoping my roommate doesn't get too drunk and try to ruin my stream again. So, I was pissed off that she wanted to cook. So I threw eggs away and she decided to like just try to trash my computer. So that was awesome. Anyway, so my life's a living hell. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to these movies, even if they're terrible. But I always love talking with them, with you guys. So I'll be here next Monday.
Yep, it's the only reason why we do this godforsaken show. So, letting you guys know what we got coming up tomorrow night on the Barroom Podcast, episode 51 for the Barroom Podcast. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk more in detail about this whole Gwen Stacy transgender thing. If there's any actual truth to it, or is it just psychos projecting stuff into this film? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Jamie Foxx, the whole saga with Jamie Foxx is taking another turn now. Now apparently he's blind and paralyzed from the stroke that he probably did not suffer 3 months ago. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. An actor from Snowfall admitted to praying to the devil, then he got possessed. So if fuck around and find out in real time happened to that guy. Tom Cruise is apparently going at war with Christopher Nolan and Barbie to get more IMAX screenings for Mission Impossible. And then is Warner Brothers actually going to be stupid enough to keep Ezra Miller past this Flash movie that's coming out next week? Are they actually even considering keeping him after everything that's gone on in the last year? We'll talk about that tomorrow night, all on the Barroom Podcast. So going quick shout out to everyone who was here with us tonight. Duke Nukem, Excalibur, Rico was joining us, Spencer, Drax the Clown, Bush Pan Down was also here with us tonight. And I want to make sure I got everyone before we sign off. I think that was everyone. We had a few people who were in Rumble watching us as well. By the way, we're coming up on 900 subs on YouTube and almost 100 subs on Rumble as well. So if you guys haven't subscribed to us on those platforms, go ahead and do it so we can grow those numbers as well. But until then, we will see you guys tomorrow night on the Barber Podcast. Duke's giving you great advice to kick her out.
Yeah, I know.
So till then, we will see you guys tomorrow. We got a lot of stuff coming up this week. Adios, people. Way.